Good evening, and welcome to the Folklore Hearth. Tonight, I'll be sharing a few old tales from Wales, where mountain lakes hold quiet secrets and kingdoms may rest beneath the sea. We'll begin with the gentle mystery of the Lady of Llyn Fach, before listening for echoes from Cantre'r Gwaelod and other hidden lands. If you find these tellings comforting, you're welcome to like the video or subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy them. I'd also love to know where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. For now, perhaps dim the lights, settle beneath the covers, and let the room grow still around you. Take a slow breath and listen closely as the waters of a Welsh lake begin to speak. In the quiet fold of the Welsh hills, there lay a lake so still it seemed to be holding its breath. Far and wide, it was known as Llyn Fach, cradled by old mountains whose peaks leaned into the clouds. Their slopes were a patchwork of cropped grass and heather, with here and there a scatter of wildflowers, loosening their colour into the green. It was here that a young farmer went about his days. His name was Llyn, a lad known not for ambition, but for a calm, steady love of ordinary things. He took his pleasure in small matters: the soft clatter of cowbells, the cooing of doves in the eaves, the distant hurry of a brook working its way down through the fields. He lived with his widowed mother in a low farmhouse below the mountain, and their cattle grazed the mountain pastures that ran down to the water's edge. One fine morning, while the sun laid its slow gold across the hills, Llyn brought his cattle to graze near the water. The air was crisp and clean, carrying the peaty smell of the land that always seemed to settle over him like a familiar coat. He sat himself down on a moss-cushioned stone, and time itself appeared to slow, each moment warm with the promise of spring not far off. Out of that stillness, beneath the light skipping along the lake's surface, something began to stir. A murmur first, a single ripple against the calm. Then, breaking the smooth face of the water, a figure rose. A lady, so lovely she seemed to have been shaped from the lake itself, both part of it and apart from it, made of water and morning light. Her hair caught the sun as though it had been drawn out into fine gold thread. Her eyes were the clear blue of a twilight sky, and when they met Llyn's, the look in them went as deep as a bell heard from far off. He could not find a word to say. The breeze skipped over the water the way his heart skipped in his chest. He had brought bread with him for his own meal, and hardly knowing what he did, he held it out to her across the water as an offering. She drew near, considered it, and shook her head with a small, kind smile. "Too hard is your bread," she seemed to tell him, and she slipped back beneath the surface before he could speak. He came again the next morning, and this time he carried bread soft and unbaked, still moist from the trough. Again she rose, and again she gently refused it. Too soft is your bread, was her meaning. And once more, the water closed over her like a curtain drawn shut. On the third morning, he brought a loaf that was neither the one thing nor the other, lightly baked, tender, warm from the hearth. He held it out with no great hope, only patience deep as the lake and plain as the hills. And this time the lady took it, and the light of her acceptance spread slowly across her face. Then the still water stirred a second time, and from it rose a tall, grave man, stately as a king, with two young women at his side. And the two were as like to Gwyn's lady as one ripple is to the next. The same gold hair, the same twilight eyes. The old man spoke, his voice low as water over stone. If Gwyn could tell his true love from her sister, he said, she was free to go with him. If not, she must remain in the lake forever. Gwyn's heart sank, for he could see no difference at all between them. But he looked, and he looked again, and at last he saw it. The small, particular way one of them had tied the lace of her sandal, a thing he had noticed on those quiet mornings by the shore. Softly he named her, and softly she stepped to his side. The lake father smiled then, well pleased, and granted her a dowry of as many cattle, sheep, and goats as she could number in a single breath. The lady drew that breath and counted swiftly by fives, and up out of the water came the beasts in their fives, until the shore was crowded with the gleam of them. Only one thing the old man asked in return, and the lady asked it too, as a promise between her and Gwyn. Should he ever strike her 3 times without cause, 3 causeless blows, however light, she would gather all that was hers and return to the waters she had come from. Gwyn gave his promise gladly, for he could not imagine a day he would raise his hand to her at all. And so they were wed, their vows spoken under a wide sky the sinking sun had painted, the soft wisps of cloud seeming to nod their blessing. Life closed gently around them like a well-worn blanket, holding them through season after season of quiet joy. They kept a farm tucked among the low hills, its thatch turned to gold in the amber light of dawn and evening. The smell of burning peat mingled there with wild mint and clover that the wind carried in. Their cattle thrived. Their fields answered to their hands, and the world seemed to hand them one small wonder after another. In time, they were blessed with 3 sons, each with something of their mother's clear gaze and their father's steady, unhurried strength. The laughter of children rang across the hills like birdsong, woven into the patient rhythm of the land. Yet the lady was not altogether of this world, and now and then she saw further into things than those around her. So it was that the 3 causeless touches came, as she had always known they might. Not in anger, never in anger, but in gentle, absent-minded moments Gwyn scarcely noticed himself. The first fell at a christening, where all the folk were merry, and the lady alone grew quiet and wept soft tears. Puzzled, wishing only to comfort her, Gwyn laid a hand upon her shoulder to rouse her from her sorrow. It meant nothing but kindness, yet it counted. The second came at a wedding, amid dancing and delight, when, to the surprise of all the ladies' eyes, again filled with tears at what she alone could see waiting down the years for the happy pair. Caught up in the joy of the day, Gwyn touched her arm gently, meaning her to smile with the rest. Still, it was another mark upon the promise. The third and last came at a burial, on a grey and blustery day. There, among the mourners, the lady softly smiled, for she saw that the one departed had slipped free of every earthly care and passed into rest and ease. Gwyn, not understanding, laid his hand once more upon her arm, the lightest of touches, to still her. 3 unmeant touches, as light as a passing breeze, and yet enough. As the meaning of those gentle touches settled over their story, the lady understood that a promise made in quiet sincerity had come, at last, to its close. She looked once upon Gwyn, and once upon their sleeping sons, with a smile that held only love and no reproach at all. Then she rose and went out to the field, and there she called her cattle to her by name, the grey, the brindled, the little black calf, and all the beasts that had come out of the lake at her counting. One after another, they lifted their heads and followed her, a long and patient line moving down through the reeds toward the water. Her figure faded into the last of the dawn mist, and the herd went after her, and the lake received them home with low, knowing sigh, until the surface lay smooth and unbroken once more. Gwyn woke to the ordinary music of morning and felt, somewhere in the air, a gentle absence. He understood that the promise had come to pass, yet the land lay unchanged around him, offering the quiet comfort of its beauty as it always had, and their 3 sons still slept soft and safe beneath the golden thatch. The boys grew tall and wise, as steady as the hills and stones of their homeland, and the lady, though she had gone beneath the water, was not lost to them altogether. In the years that followed, she came again to her eldest son, meeting him in the green places between the farm and the shore, at a spot the folk would ever after call the Physician's Gate. There, in soft tones by day, as she had once taught by the fireside, she gave into his keeping a rare and gentle gift, a deep knowledge of every herb that grew, of roots and leaves and healing waters, and of the way pain may be coaxed to loosen and let go. From him it passed to his brothers, and the world came to know the 3 of them as the physicians of Midfi, men who could soothe suffering and bring back health. Dressed in the plain, hard-wearing wool of their country, remedies folded into their tunics and held in their calm, understanding eyes. Word of their skill and of the humility that came with it spread through the valleys like the far-off trill of a harp. Villages near and distant welcomed them warmly. People told of herbs that seemed to answer to their touch, and of aches that quietly eased beneath their gentle hands. And in each of them, folk who had known her said, something of the lady lived on, her grace in their calm certainty, her care for others in all they did. As for Llyn, his life stayed bound to those hills, his heart a slow river of memory. He grew old with the grace of a well-weathered oak, and often, of an evening, he would make his way down to the lake and sit a while by the smooth water, the wind moving low through the reeds. The lake was a mirror for all his memories, the small joys and the sweet sorrows worn deep into his heart, rosy at dawn, deep blue at dusk, unchanging as ever. And sometimes, when twilight thickened toward night, he might almost have believed that a lady's shape moved across the far water, her soft laugh drifting in on the breeze. When such a thing seemed to stir among the shadows, Llyn would close his eyes and let the present settle around him like a fond embrace, and listen to the old lullaby of the land. So the seasons turned on, slow and sure. The crickets sang their nightly tune. An owl called somewhere in the trees, and a deep peace settled over the hills and the water, held safe in the constancy of the land and the soft rustle of living things. The story of Llyn, his fair lady, and their gifted sons lived on, remembered not as a tale of endings or partings, but as a long, unhurried hymn to the quiet, enduring beauty of a life, echoing forever in the gentle lapping of Llyn I Fach. Release any tension you're holding and let the next story find you right where you are. There was once, long ago, in the days when mist wound through the rolling green of the Welsh hills, a kingdom known as Cantre'r Gwaelod. It was no ordinary realm, for it lay low by the gentle curve of Cardigan Bay, a stretch of fruitful land woven with farms and snug cottages, where the air carried the scent of the sea and of the wildflowers that bordered its fields. The kingdom was kept from the reach of the ocean by great sea walls, like the outstretched arms of a mother holding the waters at bay. Strong they were, hewn from the dark, glistening stones of the coast, standing firm against the restless tides. Alongside them ran the sluice gates, tall and steadfast, the work of craftsmen who had coaxed safety from the elements themselves. In quieter hours, a soft murmur rose as the gates nudged the lapping waves back beyond the walls. Within this realm thrived a bounty so rich that the fields of Cantre'r Gwaelod were often spoken of as a paradise on earth. There were gardens where vines twined about old stone arches, and orchards heavy with apples ripened, sweet by the sun. By day, the light danced on the leaves, casting playful shadows that swayed upon the earth. By night, lamps flickered like small stars, guiding each heart home. The peace of Cantre'r Gwaelod was watched over by a keeper named Llyn, a man quick to laughter and fond of the pleasures of a long evening. He held the key to the kingdom's safety. Into his hands was entrusted the care of the sluices, the closing of them at the proper hour, the holding back of the brine and its roar. With his hearty laugh and his store of old tales, Llyn was well loved by all who knew him, for there was a merriment in him that made even the greyest day shine a little brighter. On an evening poised between spring and summer, a feast was laid in Cantre'r Gwaelod, a grand feast where laughter threaded brightly through the hall. Goblets were raised, tankards met with a cheerful clink, and the air filled with a rich medley of scents: honeyed mead, fresh baked bread, the warm spice of roasted meat. Torchlight cast a golden hue upon the gathered faces, each one glowing with the easy warmth of good company. Llyn, his hearty laugh ringing above the merriment, was at the very heart of it, his spirits high and his voice booming with tales that painted pictures in the mind. In that snug, laughter-filled hall, the cares of the world seemed to slip away, forgotten the way one forgets the sound of distant thunder. But as the laughter softened into the warm, hazy edges of the deeper night, and voices drew close beneath quilts of drowsy dreams, Llyn's duty waited for him under the starlit sky. The gates, silent and simple in their steadfastness, seemed to call to him through the dark. Yet the good keeper, lulled by the whirl of the feast, found his senses grown slow and soft. And so, at the edge of the night, when the world holds its breath, the gates were left untended. Far beneath the rolling blankets of nighttime cloud, the tide, ever so gently and ever so quietly, slipped its fingers through the waiting gaps. The sea, with a patient, coaxing insistence, found its way into the heart of Cantre'r Gwaelod, while sleep held the people in its tender grasp. The water, soft as a lullaby, began to thread through the fields. It moved through the kingdom's gardens and silent orchards, winding into the roots and turning the paths to still reflections beneath the moon's silver light. Come morning, the tide had settled over the land, drawing the once breathing kingdom beneath calm waves. Reeds stood where houses had slept, and the gulls took to the sky, their calls a gentle echo against the wide blue above. Tenderly, the sea gathered up the quiet echoes of the world below. To this day, they say, the bells of the sunken churches ring softly from beneath the waves, a music carried on the ocean's deepest currents. The murmurs of the past rise gently on the breeze, speaking in hushed tones of the world that once lay sheltered by those ancient walls. Time flowed on like the endless tides, and the memory of Cantre'r Gwaelod became part of the sea itself, a silver shimmer on the water under the sun, a wistful melody sung by the waves under the stars. If you wander the coast where the wild thyme grows and the sea breeze strokes the grass, and if you listen, you may catch those distant chimes, carried on the wind like the softest of lullabies, echoing with the mystery of the old walls and the story of a paradise long given over to the sea. And so, Cantre'r Gwaelod, its glory now resting gently beneath the waves, reminds the quiet dreamer and the patient listener of the beauty held in remembrance. Its dim towers rise like dreams upon the seabed, kept safe in the hold of time, a soft reminder that all worlds, however dearly loved by the hearts of their people, belong at last to the slow turning of things, under the quiet watch of the stars and the tender light of the moon. Cantre'r Gwaelod rests, a treasure of memory, breathing softly beneath the restless expanse of Cardigan Bay, dreaming its dreams upon the sleeping world. May your own dreams be gentle as starlight, and murmur sweetly beneath the velvet sky, and teach you the beauty of quiet, unhurried tales told at the very edge of the world. The tale of Cantre'r Gwaelod, held in the gentle grasp of time and tide, lingered on in the hearts of those who walked the shores, listening for echoes of its past. On nights when the sea mirrored the darkness of the sky, soft as velvet, a wanderer might feel drawn to the water's edge, feeling the old pull of history beneath their feet. As the moon hung low, laying a silver path across the gentle rise and fall of the waves, the air grew rich with salt and wild flora, a scent that seemed to speak of the lost kingdom. Beneath the steady wash of the water, the melodious peal of the submerged bells seemed to rise, not as a stark reminder of loss, but as an enduring lullaby. Those who listened closely could almost picture the kingdom's life still pulsing beneath the waves. They might see the orchards standing lush, the trees heavy with forgotten fruit, their leaves caught in a slow dance with the undersea currents. The fields, once golden with grain that swayed in the sunlight, now swayed with a strange gentle grace, dressed in long strands of seaweed and beaded with glistening pearls. Beyond the fields, the old roads of Cantre'r Gwaelod lay silent under the sea's gentle touch, stirring the quiet depths. The ebb and flow seemed to carry the memory of children's laughter, bright and sweet as the far-off cries of birds threading the salt-thick air. Time, in its slow passing, had polished these memories to a gentle gleam, whispering secrets of the past in rhythms only the heart could hear. And in those rare moments when twilight's hush stilled the world, the waters seemed to shimmer with a soft, unearthly light, as though a whole sky of stars had settled on the waves, their reflections merging with the infinity above. In that meeting of sea and sky, one might feel Cantre'r Gwaelod not merely as a lost kingdom, but as a realm suspended between worlds, a dream woven of earth and water, of song and silence. The sea itself seemed more alive then, its vast reach a keeper of stories that lapped softly against the soul. Wandering the dunes, those who loved the land found comfort in the old tales, knowing their whispers travelled deep into the ocean's embrace, and perhaps deeper still into their dreams. Here, on the quiet sands, a hand might rest against weathered driftwood, tracing the shapes of stories told and retold, feeling the pulse of history in each grain of sand lifted by the breeze. Children, their eyes wide to the wonder of the world, would pause in their play to listen to the elders, storytellers whose voices conjured the sunken realm. In gentle lyrical words, they painted its bustling markets and bright harbours, now stilled beneath the waves, tracing the shape of all that once was, and gifting a sense of connection across the years. And so, generation upon generation, Cantre'r Gwaelod drifted onward in the hearts and minds of the Welsh folk. The sea, calm or storm-kissed, held its secrets closer than a lover's promise, whispering them softly to any who would listen, carrying the realm's memory far beyond the shoals into the deep blue of eternity. Perhaps, one might think, it is in these sea-worn lullabies that the true beauty of Cantre'r Gwaelod rests. For in its watery sleep, it whispers to us still, urging our hearts to remember the tales seeded upon the tide. A soft call to honour what was, to cherish what is, and to nurture what may yet come to be. In the end, the legacy of Cantre'r Gwaelod, of Llyn and his key, of the laughter of festivals and the peace of sunsets over shimmering fields, is not one of loss alone. It is a living memory, a bond held firm between land and sea, past and present, the bright eye of remembrance cast over the depths, ever watchful, ever dreaming. So if you ever find yourself on that green coastal path, with the sea song softly blessing the air, take a moment to stand still. Let the breeze and the soft lap of the water tell you their stories. Feel their touch upon you, like the sweetest of lullabies sung by those of ages past. Remind reminding your heart of its kinship with both the steady earth and the ever-changing sea. No need to hold on to anything. Just drift along as we begin once more. There was once a boy named Elidyr who lived in a small village set between open fields and the gentle slopes of rolling hills. The air there carried the scent of blossom and the earthy smoke of peat curling from the thatched roofs of the cottages. Elidyr was being taught his letters by a stern old master, and the long hours bent over his book wore on his restless spirit. For what he loved best was to wander alone, most of all along the banks of the river that wound through the heart of the land, murmuring quietly to itself as it went. One day, weary of his lessons and his master's sharp corrections, he slipped away to the river and did not turn home. He tucked himself into a hollow beneath the grassy bank where the water ran cool and low, and there he stayed a while, listening to the current speak its old, patient language to the stones. It was as the light of the setting sun spread across the water and turned it to rippling amber that two little folk came stepping out from the shadow of a nearby hillock. Their eyes held a quiet, knowing light, and they moved with an easy grace across the mossy ground. Curious, his heart open to wonder, Elidyr looked up at them. The little folk had a calm, unhurried air, and they beckoned to him. "Come with us, Elidyr," they said, their voices soft as leaves stirring in a summer wind. "We will lead you to a country full of gentle delights." Taking him by the hands, they brought him to a hidden passage that seemed to open in the hillside itself, its entrance framed by trailing vines and sweet, with the scent of unseen blossom. The way was dim at first, and then the world changed around him. He found himself in a land of soft, glowing beauty beneath the hills, where every stone and leaf seemed to hum a low, contented song. The land lay under a mild and constant light, though there was no sun in that sky, nor moon, nor any star, only a gentle glow, as of a dusk that had settled and chosen to stay. Small fair folk went about their days among green glades and flowering meadows, their laughter carrying through the sweet air like the far-off chime of little bells. They were a slight and fair-haired people, gentle in their ways, who never told a lie and could not abide one. They ate no meat, but lived on milk and delicate dishes touched with saffron, and they thought little of the hurry and wanting of the world above. There was warmth in this place, and welcome, and a deep quiet that sank into Elidyr's bones and eased him. Elidyr was brought before the king of that country, who received him kindly and gave him into the keeping of his own young son, so that the two boys might be companions. Together they wandered the glades and shared the small, easy games of that land. The prince had a ball of gold that he loved to play with, its surface smooth and warm, and he would toss it to Elidyr across the meadow grass, and Elidyr delighted in its heft, in the way it caught the light and seemed to hold the glow of 100 sunsets somewhere inside it. Days turned to nights and back again, without much measure in that land beneath the hills. Elidyr came and went between the two worlds, crossing the boundary as easily as one drifts from a dream into another. He kept the secret close and told it to no one but his mother, who listened to his wondrous tales with amazement. And his mother, hearing so often of the riches of that hidden country, grew curious, and one day asked him, half in play, whether he might not bring her back some small golden thing to hold. Elidyr, wishing to please her and thinking little of the harm, carried the wish with him the next time he crossed below. And so, on a day when he and the prince were at their games, and the golden ball came rolling near across the grass, Elidyr caught it up and held it close, and ran for the passage and the world above. As he went, a faint song seemed to follow him from the watchful quiet behind, a kind of farewell from the country beneath the hills. With each step away, the world seemed to cool a little, and the light to dim, but he had not gone unseen. As he crossed the threshold of his own home, his foot caught, and he stumbled, and the golden ball slipped from his arms and rolled away across the floor. Two of the little folk, who had followed close and quiet behind him, stepped gently in, gathered up the ball and were gone again toward the hills, without a harsh word, leaving only a hush where they had been. Elidyr searched afterward for the way back. He returned to the river, to the hollow in the bank, to every green fold of the hillside. But the hidden passage was nowhere to be found. Season followed season, and still the door beneath the hills stayed closed to him, grown faint and far, like a dream one cannot quite hold on waking. The weight of what he had done settled quietly into Elidyr's heart and tempered his youthful high spirits. Yet he never forgot the kind and peaceful country he had known. As the years of his life flowed onward, he grew into a thoughtful, soft-spoken man, gentle in his ways, carrying the wisdom of remembered joy and the quiet understanding that all things have their season. In his old age, when he told the story of the Golden Land, his voice would soften and his eyes would grow bright. So dearly did he hold the memory. Years drifted by like slow clouds across a summer sky, and Elidyr carried the memory of that hidden world within him like a lantern, a quiet light to guide his steps through the waking days. There were nights when, soothed by the sound of wind and rain drumming loftily on his roof, he would close his eyes and feel once more the warmth of the golden land folding gently around him. And on certain evenings still, when the sky was washed with gold and amber, Elidyr would find himself walking again beside the river. There, he would pause and close his eyes to listen to its steady melody, a sound both wistful and calming. For somewhere in it, he might catch a trace of the glowing land he had known and be reminded that magic keeps quietly to hearts that stay open to wonder. The tale of Elidyr is one about the fine balance between curiosity and contentment, between the joy of finding and the wisdom that comes with loss. In his heart, he kept the kindness of those fair folk and the steady glow of a land unchanging beneath the hills, a gift that time could not wear away. Sleep came kindly to Elidyr on the quieter nights, and in his dreams he would walk once more along paths of golden light, the air touched with the scent of flowers that never faded. And in those dreams the golden ball would find its way back into his hands, shining with a light like the stars themselves. Time passed gently over the village, softening the sharp edges of the years into a long, unbroken thread of shared memory. Elidyr's story was handed down to those who came after, reminding them of the wonder to be found in letting go, and the quiet peace that lives in remembering what once was. In the end, the golden land beneath the hills became, to those who knew of it, a token of the dreams we dare to imagine, the faint echoes of magic that thread through our lives like mist drifting low across the folds of the earth, and the river, tireless in its song, flows on, untroubled by time, moving beneath the stars and the soft light of the moon. And so, the story of Elidyr slips away into the quiet of night, shining faintly like the golden dreams that gather at the edges of a sleeping mind, drawing us down into a deeper rest. There, beneath the comfortable weight of soft blankets, where each slow breath seems to hold and cradle you, may you find your own way toward that softly glowing land beneath the hills, a place where dreams and memory are woven together, and peace has made its home. In the hush of night, the world speaks in whispers and sighs, the air itself carrying the slow music of the sleeping earth. Beyond the window, the village lies wrapped in shadow, sheltered beneath a sky scattered with the silver dust of stars. Inside, a warmth remains, settling around you like a familiar cloak, keeping off the faint chill of the autumn breeze beyond the walls. As Elydyr's story folds away into the comfort of well-worn tales, picture the calm of his evening walks beside that quiet river, each step cushioned by moss and soft earth. Each pause letting the stillness of the world settle into him. The river ripples beneath his gaze, holding the cool light of a moonlit night, brushed by the slow sway of the reeds. On those wandering walks, he might gather small treasures, a smooth pebble catching the moonlight, or a stray feather drifting on some unseen current. Simple things, and yet to him they seem to hold a little of that far-off magic, small reminders of the land he had once known. Let the same gentle stillness settle over you now. Feel the slow, even rise and fall of your breath, a steady rhythm to carry you further into rest. With each breath in, gather the quiet of Elydyr's world. With each breath out, let go of the day's small cares and watch them drift away like leaves upon the water. Imagine the soft glow of that golden land resting just beyond the veil of sleep, holding its quiet, lasting magic long after the story has faded. As you lie in the calm of your own room, the tales of long ago fold into the peace of sleep, a soft murmur among the lullabies. The night itself is singing. May this quiet stay with you through the night, settling your dreams into a gentle country where wonder holds, and every soft sound carries the echo of a time that does not end. Folded tenderly into the arms of this peaceful night, take a slow, deep breath and let's drift into our next story. There was once, in the gentle curve of the Welsh coast, a secluded patch of sea where the morning mist clung softly to the waves, drawing a veil over what lay beyond. People from the nearby villages spoke of the place with quiet wonder, for it was there, they said, that the green isles of the sea began. These were islands no human eye could find, unless one happened to stand upon a certain patch of enchanted turf, hidden somewhere amongst the wild heather. That green place, once discovered, would reveal the green isles and the folk who made their home upon them. The plant Rhys Gyd-Yfon, the children of Rhys the Deep. The plant Rhys Fan were a people of fair and honest nature, or so the old stories held. Their kindness and their straight dealing were known to the fortunate few who met them at the markets of Cardigan. On the clearest of days, when the air carried the salt tang of the distant sea, and the sky stretched wide and blue, the market became a bright confusion of colour and sound and scent. There, amid the bustle of tradesmen, The plant Rhys DWFN came to buy and sell, quietly, often unnoticed. It was said they moved among the stalls with a grace that hinted at their true nature, their eyes bright and friendly, yet somehow far away, as though they watched a different world lying just beneath our own. They came and went as lightly as dew upon a spider's thread, leaving behind a lingering sense of wonder and a fair bargain that gladdened the traders long after they had gone. One fine day, amid the lively chatter of the market, a farmer from a nearby hamlet made his way through the crowded lanes. His name was Bryn, and he was well known in his village for a generous heart and a pair of hard-working hands, ever gentle with his flock and careful with his crops. Yet he would sometimes confess to his sheep the loneliness that settles on a man who tends the hills alone, day after long day. As Bryn came to the market that morning, the sun stood high, scattering glints of light over the ripples of the river that wound past Cardigan. The air was rich with the smell of baked bread and roasting meat, comforting scents that mingled with the briny breeze off the sea. He moved without hurry through the lanes, nodding to familiar faces. His own stall waited for him, its baskets piled with freshly sheared wool and its jars filled with creamed honey. He was fond of these market days, warm with laughter and the soft rustle of wool changing hands. But this day would take an unusual turn. While brushing flecks of hay from his thick woolen coat, Bryn caught sight of a curious patch of turf near the edge of a quiet lane. It was strange to look upon, almost glowing with a life of its own, and somehow untouched by the crowds passing all around it. Drawn by a pull he could not name, he stepped onto it. A hush fell over the world. The noise of the market dimmed until it was no more than a distant murmur carried off on the sea wind. And then, before Bryn's eyes, there unfolded a sight so beautiful that his heart seemed to pause within him. Out on the horizon, the green isles revealed themselves. Gentle hills of meadow rolled away like green velvet beneath a sky brushed with silver-edged cloud. A soft light glowed at the far corners of the islands, where streams of clear water wandered lazily over smooth stones, singing simple, tranquil songs. Bryn blinked, his heart caught by the vision. A place so peaceful it might have risen straight out of a dream. Here, he thought, was a land where the soul could rest, where cares could loosen and fall away, where joy might drift as lightly as rose petals carried on a warm sea wind. As he gazed, a gentle voice called to him from that fairyland. It came like a soft note of a lullaby, beckoning him onward, stepping as one steps in a waking dream. He crossed the line between the world he knew and the enchantment beyond it, each footfall careful and full of quiet thought. Once within the realm of the plant Rhys Elidyr, Bryn stood among the folk themselves, a people of luminous presence, their smiles as calm as seashells resting on soft sand. They greeted him warmly, their voices low and welcoming, like summer rain falling on thirsty earth. "Welcome, friend of good heart," they said, and bade him wander their lands. In their company he passed through fields that seemed to reach on without end. The gentle folk showed him treasures that carried a music of their own, melodies caught in the grain of ancient wood, and a bright, glancing laughter that seemed to live within the smooth cool of the stones. The days slipped by in easy harmony, ribbons of sunlight guiding their steps through fields of deep green. Bryn walked with the plant Rhys Elidyr beneath flowering boughs alive with birdsong, and crossed clear streams where the fish glimmered like pieces of fallen sky. One evening, his heart full of a calm contentment, Bryn thanked his new friends. They, in turn, honoured his good spirit and his gentle ways. "May your life be ever blessed with the light of joy," they said, and with a quiet nod, they gave him gifts of fair riches, not the kind that weigh heavy on a man's conscience, but riches of delicate wonder and heartfelt gratitude. And so, his heart warm and his mind still soft with the peace of that place, Bryn turned toward home, with promises of lasting friendship, spoken low between the sigh of the wind and the creak of the bough. He set his feet upon the homeward path. As he stepped back over the enchanted turf, the green isles and all their green promise faded gently into the mist, yet the memory of them stayed nestled in his heart, warm as a blessing given by a kindly soul. Back in the familiar shelter of his own fields, under the watchful gaze of a starlit night, Bryn lived on, richer than before, not richer in gold or in any practical wealth, but in the quiet knowing that such beauty exists in the hidden corners of the world. And so the green isles of the sea passed once more into the tales the sea winds carry, cradled by the lull of the waves and told beside the fire where stories take root. Wrapped in soft folds of sea mist, under skies that knew their secrets well, the islands waited, patiently, timelessly, holding within them the gentle touch of magic that weaves dreams into the world. In time, the winds carried the story far and wide, mingling with the glow of dusk and stirring through fields of tender grass, grasses that seemed to speak of old pastures and the wonders they had known. And so, when the nights grew long and the air turned brisk with the coming of winter, the people would gather close by their glowing hearths, their hearts warmed by tales of the Green Isles and their quiet, timeless beauty. There, along the heart of the Welsh coast, when all was right, when the mothering sea wore her calmest robes, and the sighing of the tides spoke only of peace, the Green Isles might reveal their hidden shores once more to any wandering soul with open eyes and a heart ready to understand. And so it is told, the Green Isles of the sea stand quietly waiting, lost to sight, yet ever alive in the soul's longing for the world's unseen magic. They linger there like a dream half remembered, like a wish carried softly on the wings of a drowsing dove, hidden and yet ever present in the reflections of our own quiet dreams. Gently they fade again, lulled by the embrace of endless time, until some new keeper of tales feels the old curiosity stir and tells them anew, bringing back to the night their quiet song, their unhurried grace. As the waves lapped softly at the shore, the listeners around the hearth would let their minds drift into the tender folds of the story, picturing that distant horizon where the Green Isles lay sleeping beneath their silken shroud of mist. They could almost hear the low music of the waves against the sand, and see the warm hues of the setting sun bleeding into the deep blue of the coming night. The elders, their eyes softened by the years, would lean back in their chairs while the crackle of the fire cast its flickering shadows across the walls. The children, wide-eyed, would lean forward instead, drinking in every word as if it carried the very taste of the sea. In their minds they crossed the hushed tides and entered lands where the old legends lived, no longer bound by the plainness of the waking world. In such moments, the humble farmhouses were drawn together by the threads of a shared telling, each person wrapped in the same warmth, each a keeper of that fragile realm that flickers between what is real and what is dreamed. And for a while, the Green Isles felt as near as the gentle arms of sleep, murmuring of a peace where the world's troubles were no more than faint echoes on the wind. Outside, where the brisk night kept its secret watch, the moon laid a silver path across the darkened water, a quiet sentinel over lands not yet seen. Stars glimmered faintly overhead, their far light stretching like a fine thread between the heavens and the earth, sending down a serene glow that touched the sleeping fields where Bryn and others like him might dream, their hearts made richer by tales of wonder. So the nights passed in that coastal sanctuary, where stories had the power to bind one soul to another, and the magic of the Green Isles found a safe harbour in the hearts of those who believed, who dared to trust in the softly whispered promise of that enchanted land. The memory of Bryn's journey lay cradled in many a gentle mind, an ember of warmth that would not fade with the coming dawn. And perhaps, on the very quietest of nights, when the children lay in the soft embrace of sleep, and the whole world had fallen still, some curious soul might stand again upon the enchanted turf. Patiently, they would listen for the faintest breath of wind and wait, hopeful, for the shimmering shape of the Green Isles to rise at the edge of their sight. For in the long keeping of shared stories and half-remembered tellings, the Green Isles made a bridge between the everyday and the everlasting. They lived within the rhythm of the tides, forever waking, retreating, and rising again within the hearts of those who dared to dream. And like the waves that cradle the shore, their story would unfold slowly, endlessly, a small part of the world's long song of wonder. And so, within that timeless, enchanted lullaby, the Green Isles of the sea remained a quiet beacon of hope and mystery, an open door to a realm where the imagination could wander free, forever bound up with the soft sea winds and the gentle promise of hidden magic. That's all for tonight. I hope these old tales brought you a little comfort and calm. Sweet dreams.